Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. Thanks so much for coming. We have Paul on the phone. Are you there, Paul?
He might not be on quite yet.
Aha, all right. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the order of agenda. All in favor say yes. All
Yes.
opposed say no. Thank you. Staff reports. We have the arts tonight. Yay! So Rachel, I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Tonight we have Sharon Eide with us, who is our K-12 arts facilitator, and she will virtually be sharing some students from Clara Barton. They were all primed to come and present tonight, and then they ended up having a holiday program. But they talked about that a little less fear, but they were able to really use the 4 C's and collaborate and brainstorm how to come up with a virtual presentation. So Sharon, thank you.
Showcase what our students are doing. The students that I have tonight are Clara Barton, little artists, and when Becky Foden asked me if I was interested in presenting tonight, I said sure. So I visited with Janelle Sigridson, who's here with me tonight. She's a 5th grade teacher, and she had seen a project that was done that was called Living Artists, and it was done by some teachers, some art teachers, and was shown at a convention, an art convention in Seattle. And so we decided that's what we were going to do. So as we got started with that, we realized, oh, no, it's not going to work. The students that are doing this are also in music. So change of plans. What we came up with was to have the students do research on a famous artist. And when they finished with the research, they wrote a monologue, which was quite interesting to see them trying to read that. Can't tell you how many times we had to restart. And then they created a piece of art in the style of that artist. They wrote a letter to that artist so that we could create a pamphlet, which I'll give to you at the end of the program. So this is the result.
Good evening. I am Grandma Moses. I started painting at the young age of 82, but I only did it for fun because I never had any lessons, and I always focused on my jam that I won ribbons for at the fair and made homemade. But one day, a young man came to me, and he wanted one of my paintings. And I said, "We'll come back tomorrow, and I'll have one ready for you." And so he did. He paid me some money, and he went off with my painting. After that, my paintings started to get popular, but I didn't understand why, because I never had any lessons and I didn't think that they were all very good. I usually was popular for my jam. Good evening. Thank you for being here. Have a good evening. Hola. ¿Cómo está Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo Calderón, or also known as Frida Kahlo? You may know me because of my famous eyebrows, but you may not know that I only painted myself with the unibrow because I wanted it to look like a flying bird. I did self-portraits and portraits, but also still lifes. My health has been a serious problem since I was a child. When I was 6, I got polio disease, and because of polio, that left me with a very, very weak leg. So, my father suggests to put me in lots of physical activity, such as biking, swimming, and even boxing. When I was 18, my boyfriend and I got into a terrible bus accident. I broke my leg in 11 places. But even worse, my boyfriend got killed. Oh, look at the time. Sorry, I've got to go meet my husband Diego for dinner. Adios.
Go.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Salvador Dali. I was born on May 11th, 1904. Before I was born, my older brother Salvador had died. So I was very confused growing up because I was treated like my older brother. I went to art school in Madrid, Spain, when I was a teenager. Once I grew up, I got to meet many famous people, including Walt Disney and other movie directors. I also got to meet Pablo Picasso. I am a surrealist. A surrealist is an artist who fills most of their art with mysterious or familiar objects that have been changed oddly. Other artists thought my art was strange or weird. I painted memories from my dreams or nightmares. And because of my brother's death and being told to act like him, I was very different. I would do anything to get attention. Also, when I went to the art school, I thought their teaching styles were old-fashioned and boring. I liked the new art that was being created in Paris, France. Good night.
Go.
Hello, my name is Vincent Van Gogh. You probably know who I am already, but for those who don't, I am an artist. I was born in Zundert in the Netherlands in 1853. In the last 10 years of my life that I've been painting, I've painted over 2,000 pieces of art. When I started painting, I admit I used some dark colors. You probably know of the painting I called the Potato Eaters. Some of the paintings I did were a little depressing, but when I found those bright colors, my paintings changed in how they looked and with the colors. When my friend Paul Gauguin left me, I was angry and guilty. After a while being angry, I cut my earlobe off. I've only sold one painting, but in the future, I hope that people will learn to love them. Thank you.
2, 1, go.
Hi, I'm Georgia O'Keefe. I was born in a small farm in Wisconsin. As I was a child, I went to a Catholic school. There, the nuns used to slap my hands when I was drawing too small. Then, I vowed never to draw tiny ever again. When I was about 10, I started taking Saturday painting lessons. All of my friends thought I was crazy because at that time, only men were artists. As I became an adult, I moved to Texas to teach school. There, I fell in love with the wide open space. Later, I met Alfred Stigler, who was a famous photographer. Alfred also had an art gallery where he showed my work in New York. Then, I moved to Tahoe, New Mexico, and had an art colony. I also married Alfred Stigler. I used to go out in the fields and paint flowers and sun-bleached bones. I'm working on a series of sun-bleached bones currently. Alfred is hoping to have them shown in a gallery opening. I hope to see you there.
2, go.
Hi, I'm Andy Warhol, and I'm a pop artist. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1928. People were very shocked when pop art was introduced. I have a natural talent for art. At an early age, I had some medical problems. Therefore, I usually did not even go to school. I took weekend art classes at a local college when I was a young boy. When I was older, I was a graphic artist. I was also a window dresser. Every day, I ate tomato soup for lunch. I also made movies. One movie was a 6-hour one of a person sleeping in my New York studio. It's a factory. Another one was Eat. It featured a man eating a mushroom for 45 minutes. My latest one is Empire. It shows the Empire State Building for 8 hours in a row. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the people who helped with this in a variety of ways, to Rob Arneson and Denise Odegaard and Kirby for their help with the tech, to Janelle for her time and energy working with the students, and to the parents of the students who allowed me to have them for as long as I needed, to the students for their enthusiasm and their willingness to work with me for as long as it took. Some of them suggested maybe we should even have a sleepover. It was a blast. I enjoyed it, and so did they. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. That was amazing. That was just astonishing. I mean, the lengths that the young artists went to in their research and costuming and everything. Does anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to share? Rebecca.
I have to make a comment. I know all of those artists, and one very personally, the first one, but I had no idea what they were doing when they were staying at school and working on this project, these extra hours, I kind of had an idea, but I hadn't have an idea into what it would fold into.
Are you the mother of Grandma Moses?
I am, yes. And so, I mean, it's fabulous. And Mrs. Idy, you did a great job, like you always do with the kids. Thank you so much.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Yes, Rachel?
I would just add in that Mrs. Folden really gave her kudos to Sharon Idy. She did this all on her lunch hours, after school, put in all of this time, and she never asked for anything for it. She never complained. Her enthusiasm with these kids is just contagious. So thank you, Sharon.
It's just so inspiring. Thank you so much. I guess I do have one question. Do the students in general, kind of the general student population, get to see some of this or have any idea this is going on? Or so the staff has seen it and the classes. You know, actually, we're on TV. Could I have you come up to use a microphone because we'd like to hear about this? And turn it on, please.
All of the students except for the Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was the fourth grader. All of the other students are in Miss Sigurdsson's class, and so they've had book reports, and they've used this information to do that as well. So they were coming downstairs to get their finished artwork so that they could use it in their presentation, and borrowing capes and borrowing, mustaches and things. So
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so very much.
you're welcome.
Right. Now we are at the portion of our meeting where we recognize our audience and give folks an opportunity to speak. And there was not, my bad, I didn't realize you were part of the presentation. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the board tonight from the public? All right, moving on. Staff reports. Report from FEA. Welcome.
I'm Laura Haugen Christians.
Hi, Laura.
I teach English at Davies High School, and I'm the Vice President of FEA, and there is no report.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight. So now we're to gifted services. Ms. Duscher? Oh,
That's fine.
I will. I'm so glad I have a video, too. I am Ann Dukesher, and I'm the coordinator for Fargo Public Schools Gifted Services Program. And tonight I brought with me my colleague, Stacy Anderson, who is a gifted services teacher at Lewis and Clark Elementary. And we thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit with you about the program tonight and entertain some of your questions. I think maybe most importantly, I'd like to start out by just saying our goal with programming in the district is to take this particular demographic of students who are gifted and or academically talented and or performing significantly beyond grade level, and support their academic growth too, to push them so that they have the opportunity to grow and achieve like all of our students. And so in planning for being here this evening, Stacy and I talked about wanting to express well to you the level of challenge that our students both need and experience, and why it's so important that they feel that level of push and challenge. And so we probably could have shared this all with you just between the two of us, but I think that it is better said in the mouths of the students themselves, and so and would be more poignant as well. And so we interviewed lots of students. We went across the district and asked just a few simple questions. Are you challenged? How are you feeling challenged? Is it difficult? And why is that important? So we got some really good answers to the questions from students, and way more than 8 minutes of video that could have gone on for much longer, but I think we captured what was salient in the essence of that in about an 8-minute clip. And so that,
To push us so that we can learn.
For them to know what we know. For them to know what we know and what we need to work on.
Yeah. If we are just doing easy stuff, we're not really learning too much, so they need to push us to challenge us. And if we're challenged, then we learn more. So
that I can keep on learning, so that I'm not just learning stuff that I already know. Kind of so that I'm getting my time used a little bit more wisely.
For our middle schooler, you know, he was willing to make the move. And after the first day, he said, you know what, this is the best thing we could have done. And since then, he said, hey, why didn't we move sooner? Now he's like, hey, I'm not the only smart one here, and he has to struggle. And he didn't know how to deal with that when it first happened to him, because when gifted kids are, when things come easy for gifted kids, they don't have to struggle. And they never learn how to struggle. And so the first thing that happens when they hit a wall and they shut down, because it's like, well, I don't know how to do this, forget it. But this is giving him the opportunity to figure out how to meet those challenges now before he gets to the point where he just shuts down and just completely, you know, doesn't want to work at all.
Wouldn't it be 64 times what? 64 times. Hold up. 64 times. Okay. Oh, wait. So the 4x4 boxes in that box. In that box? Yeah. Like how many cubes are in it? The ones down. The big one. The big one? Yeah. How many cubes? Well, if there's, she said that's a 16 rows of 4. Yeah, it's a 4x4 box, so there's 4x4, and that would be 64 in the big box.
Into brain thinking, and it's like more challenging, and like it's more confusing, and you get more excited, and like you're not sitting around doing nothing.
Sometimes it gets a little hard, but then once I get the hang of it, like I said, it gets really easy once I get the hang of it.
I think it definitely does push our thinking. Most of the time, we are at an upper level, but our teachers are pushing us even a little further to go above and beyond a little bit more. Like, for a lot of us, we don't know what we're actually doing, so she might start off slow, but as we go on, she'll get us to where we need to be. And so when we don't know it, because it's so high up, she helps us get to that point by starting off slow but working our way, and we eventually are able to get through.
It's hard, but it's challenging, and you do have to regret it, but you can get it if you really try and you ask questions.
When we move back down to Fargo, he's with his age mates as well as his intellectual mates in the advanced programming that the school district has, and
You know,
it's really allowed him to flourish. He's made a lot of friends.
Good.
He's doing well in school, struggles, but that's okay.
We like that. That's actually our favorite part, is that all of our kids are struggling. They have something that they all need to work on at some point to another. You know, they still have their areas where they flourish, but we knew, you know, that's why we came down, is we had seen John go from the top and stay up there, and all of a sudden he was starting to slide down because he was never challenged. And knowing that we had 3 more kids coming up, we didn't want that same thing to happen. We wanted them to just keep growing. So I think as a parent, of kids, as a GT parent, I think the hardest thing to hear is, your child is doing just fine.
There's no need to worry about him.
Yes. And here, it's like, oh, did you hear, you know, like I said, just that comment where, oh, you know what, I notice sometimes when the curriculum, because she's like, I have to teach to all the levels, but yet she can figure out a way to bring that, you know, bring her interest back in. and still work with the lower kids too.
It's important because
So this is kind of like
if I was in the regular class, I would get bored and I would feel less challenged and I probably wouldn't do my best work there. And here I have to work harder and I try my best and I get good grades.
Geometry is challenging, and that's a good thing for me because if I took regular math, it would be so easy. I would get really bored, and math wouldn't be my favorite subject anymore, and that wouldn't get me to a good start in life.
For us, we were looking at places down by the cities, and we came across your paper, and then once we had talked to you, we're like, you know, 'cause sometimes they look at it on paper, but once we had talked to you guys, we knew that you were open to helping our kids learn.
And I think with that, one of the things that we found in the school district is that the teachers that our children have been placed with are open, and they're very knowledgeable about the programs that are in place and how to work with the GET specialists at the school to provide the challenging curriculum or enrichment programs that the kids need. I think all kids deserve to be challenged.
So if there would be 6 of these students, we sort of have an equation and we need to find out when there will be an equal number of eyes and legs. We make a table of values and we put things into the equation and see if they come out right.
Sometimes it gets very challenging, standard deviation. Yeah, sometimes it gets really challenging, and that's a nice break from the usual, okay, here's the basic stuff, and then we're just going to jump to something hard, and that's always nice to have, because usually when we do the harder stuff, it's more thought out than the easier stuff.
And do you like it when it gets hard?
Oh yeah, it's fun.
We have interesting discussions.
Yeah. Biochemistry or computer science, one of those two, which math is really involved in. So.
Yeah, I wanted to go into computer science or something.
Hi, my name is Billy, and I go to Lewis and Clark GT, and I am in GT, gifted and talented in reading math. Well, it's important to me about those services because it's really fun. So, well, it's just a good opportunity for all those kids who are just a little bit smarter than usual.
And so how do you get challenged?
Well, the challenge is really technically everything's harder, and I'm learning something new every single day.
And so what do you think the school board should know about GT services?
Well, it's something that really challenges people big time, and it's a really good opportunity for many kids out there.
Duly noted.
Yeah, we might have been the cameraman.
Fantastic.
I could not have said that better.
That was terrific, and it's good to know. Paul, are you online yet? This has always been his thing. Anybody have any questions or comments? Dr. Gross.
If I may just add, the presentation that you heard looked at a lot of the elementary and middle school. At your table, there is a set of data that looks at our 3 high schools, Fargo South, Fargo North, and Davies, and lists for you the AP level coursework, the number of students who enrolled last year in those courses, the number of students who then took some of those courses for dual credit, or actually college level credit, and then the number of students who took those courses and then took the AP level exam. So as we think about providing opportunities for our high school level students to stretch and grow, wanted to provide you some data there as well.
Thank you. And does that comprise, at the high school level, AP kind of equals gifted and talented services?
In many districts, they either look at AP level coursework or international baccalaureate. Many districts do not do both. They do one or the other. So I think our array of AP level courses provides our students many opportunities to grow and stretch.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Gross? I had a couple quick ones. So, clearly there are differences from building to building, and that's understandable. And I don't really know the ins and outs of what is offered where. My only question was calculus at Davies and not the other schools, if you could.
Many of their classes are driven on the number of students who sign up for those classes. If we do not get the critical number of students at one building, we will certainly offer it at another, and students have the opportunity to travel to a different building to take those courses.
And does that happen at Davies?
It happens across many of our, or
Several
all
of them.
3 of our buildings.
Okay. Well, that leads me to my second question, which is the very small numbers in art. Is AP art embedded in regular art classes where you only have 1 or 2 students taking it?
Many times we will combine classes together so that a student can either take a non-AP level or an AP level course together, and then the teacher differentiates that instruction for some of those students.
I see. Thank you. Anyone else have anything for any of our presenters?
Just wanted to say thank you, and it's really fun to see the videos in both experiences. We can't always bring the kids down here to see us, but this is a great way of seeing what you're doing, so thank you.
Really fun for us to do it that way too.
Yeah, I hope we can use both of these as promos, because, really, these are not going to stay on the shelf.
This is fantastic, and thank you for taking the time to make those as well. Thank you. Appreciate it. Terrific. Brock, you have numbers and people and charts and your facility plan report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, as you recall, we are in the second year of the district's long-range facility plan that was completed after a great deal of time and effort on the part of community, administration, and the board. Feedback we need for setting the district on a path going forward. And what we thought would be, we had a request and thought it would be good for us to give you an update on that long-range facility plan. And a major portion of that was a commitment by the district to put additional dollars into ongoing maintenance. As you recall, there was a great deal of discussion about making sure that we continue to maintain our facilities at the highest level and providing equity across the district. And to the credit of the board and the support we get from the community, there's been a renewed effort to increase resources that we've put toward operational maintenance. I think it's important that we share with you as a board and the community, what are you getting for that commitment? So this evening, we've got Jim Free and his team. I'll let him introduce his team. Jim Free is the Director of Maintenance and Operations, and they're going to give you a look at what has been happening over this past 2 years as we've been putting this plan into action.
Okay. Thank you, Brock. Members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to share today. Before I start going through some of the contract and maintenance items, I do want to introduce 3 of my colleagues that are here tonight and maybe just share a little bit of what they do. Mike Semenko. Would you stand, Mike? Mike is the custodial supervisor. He started here in 1995 and is starting his 19th year. So he's been around quite a long time, worked his way up through the ranks. He supervises 98 full-time custodians, 10 part-time, 7 call-in substitute type custodians, and responsible for about 1.9 million square feet of roofs, which is a lot of roofs, and also about 2.6 million square feet of interior space, from carpet, gym floors to floor tile and everything else in between there. So anyway, thank you, Mike. Secondly, Kevin Hagnes, delivery and grounds supervisor, started for us actually as a student 15 years ago, in 1999. Kevin's duties include supervising the 13 full-time and 2 part-time staff, mostly at the warehouse and grounds. His other duties are maintaining the 262 acres of green space that we have, 30 acres of parking lots, 28 playgrounds, 27.5 miles of sidewalks. And another huge responsibility he has is delivering food for the food service program in the district. Basically, if it moves in Fargo schools, Kevin knows about it. So it's a big job. So thank you, Kevin. And Jeremy Wolf, plant and electrical supervisor. Jeremy started working with us in 2007, 7 years ago. Jeremy is supervising 10 full-time trades people, carpenters, electricians, building automation people, plumbing, those type of trades. He is responsible for maintaining about 55,000 lighting ballasts in the district, 6,000 doors with keys, 200 air handlers, 291 exhaust fans, 44 boilers, 20 pumps, 954 heating coils, and believe it or not, 5,857 separate fire devices in the district. So there's a lot of equipment out there that we maintain. My job really would be very difficult without these three people. And also Secretary Karen Hollerung works behind the scenes, does a great job, and often is overlooked. So I just wanted to make sure that she knows that she too is appreciated in this endeavor. So thank you, guys. Dr. Schatz and Mr. Leitz had asked me to briefly touch on the contracted maintenance budget. If you look in your packet there, you will find two different spreadsheets that we went through all the expenditures. If you look at the first one, it's a two-page report. It says 2013-14. You will see everything that was invoiced over $1,000 was added on here. There's countless invoices of under $1,000 that we didn't include in this, but these are just the bigger expenditures. And we broke them into different areas, different trades, door hardware, electrical equipment, and you can read sort of what type of work activity was associated with each of those expenses. If you flip over to the next page, you'll see some of the larger projects we did in 13-14. And one thing I really wanted to point out is come June and July, when we ended up with our fiscal year, obviously sometimes that bleeds from one year over from one to the next. So it's really a stressful time for me to get all those things paid for in the fiscal year and completed. And sometimes it rains, sometimes people don't get the equipment on time, and it's really a difficult time to get it all in the fiscal year. But this particular year, this is what happened in here. It bled over to the next year. So that was 13-14. And then also on the other spreadsheet that I have there, excuse me, 14-15, it shows where we're at to date. And you'll be seeing here shortly in your meetings in January and February some bid openings coming up for roof projects and other items like that coming in for the spring and summer this year. So that would be the contracted maintenance idea for, or the expenditures, the bigger expenditures that happened last year and this year. Brock also wanted me to touch a little bit on the 6th school air conditioning project. You'll see another spreadsheet in there. It looks similar to this one here. You'll see on that top of the page, it shows each building and what the awarded bid was. And under the column, it says preliminary. That's just a preliminary closeout of this project. They're pretty much finalized now. And there's one little one out yet, Lewis and Clark we found the other day. Not a very big one, but just something that you need to be aware of. But we'll look and you'll see that the total change orders for the whole project was $179,936. The contingency fund to cover that was 400 and see me if I can find that here right. 522,000. So we definitely came underneath that bid. So that was really good to see. It ended up to be a 1.87% change orders, and considering there were very old schools that we redid with the air conditioning, that was a great thing to see. Our asbestos numbers were pretty much exactly where we thought they'd be. We did a pretty good extensive survey before we started that, so we pretty much knew where all that asbestos was. A couple places we had to take care of that we weren't aware of, but by and large, we were very happy with that. Actually, on the first day of school, when school started, I looked at the guys and I said, I think we just did a miracle, because with the contractor's status in town and everybody wanting everything, and and 6 projects, it was a big undertaking. So we feel very fortunate that we got 6 new boiler plants and heating plants, and also kept it under budget. So that was good. Also, I wanted to report on the Ed Club progress. Jeremy, if you would hold those maps up here. This is I'm not sure if this could be an antique, I'm not sure, but anyway, just to update everybody on the progress, just let you know that, remember, we did share the parking lot with Bethel Church, and we are entering into agreements with Bethel now with memos of understanding to use their place as a evacuation site. So it was an infill project, and we knew a lot of that stuff was going to happen, and it's been working very well. The road is constructed all the way up to about here, 28th Avenue, and the bus loops are in, and there's the last final paving has to go on that yet. But other than that, pretty much that outside stuff is done in the front, except for the site work in the ground and the irrigation. Okay, Jeremy, if you want to bring it to the next level. A little bigger picture, you can see that the building's divided up into an A, B, and C section on the blueprints and the plans. I just put them on here. A is the gymnasium area. B is the west 2-story addition, and C is the office, commons, kindergarten area. So that's just how it's orientated there. Again, the bus loops are completed and ready to go with the curbing and everything, so that was nice to set up for spring. The only areas that are heated in the area right now are then the second story addition over here is actually heated also. We're trying to get the whole building enclosed by Christmas, so that's our push right now. That cold snap we had earlier sure slowed everything down with the minus numbers there. So that was nice to see it warm up again. Concrete work, 95% of the concrete work is done. There's some areas in the mezzanine and some stairwells that have to be concreted. Then other than that, next spring the outside sidewalks will take place. 90% of the bearing walls are completed with the block inside the building. The walls that aren't completed, primarily because we want to keep them working outside to get it enclosed. But as soon as it gets too cold that they can't work outside, or there's a reason they can't work, they're going to be inside putting up like the bathroom group walls between the men's and the ladies. There's a chase walls and where piping goes in. So those areas will be completed at that time. Structural steel, 100% of the steel is delivered and on site, and 25% of the miscellaneous metals are also here. 95% of the steel is completed, and 98% of the joists and decking is completed. So that's going to really be nice. I think the only part that there's no decking on is around the commons area, which is right here. Roofing. Gym roof is already roofed, and then also the mechanical area. That area is roofed, and also maybe by the end of the week, all of B will be done, will be completed with roofing. So that'll be a good thing to have that done. Windows in the media center are installed, and the areas right in here. Windows installed later this week also. And then mechanically is pretty far advanced. First floor in section B is 80% complete. So that's really good to see that happening. And second floor, primarily because the roof wasn't on yet, but now that that's on, that's going to progress pretty quickly. And there's about 30% of the work done in there. So that's basically it. It is far advanced. Like I say, the lower section with the main piping, the sprinklers, automatic sprinkler systems for the fire suppression is all roughed in down that area. They're starting to sheetrock probably next week in some areas in that lower level. So anyway, that's sort of the report on Ed Clapp and any other projects. So Mr. Leitz, if there's any questions anybody has or
Anybody have any questions, comments? John?
Madam Vice President, Jim, I'm just curious, as you look forward to your facilities plan, if I recall, you were projecting about 10 years into the future?
Yes.
And now that we've gotten one session year under our belts, how do you approach that ongoing, keeping it alive, going another year? How does that, if you could just tell us how that all looks, or do you go further? Or?
You know, yeah, actually, that's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done was when you look out, what does year 9 and 10 look like? I can get pretty good on year 1, 2, and 3, but when you get out to 9 and 10, you really got to think of way out there. Our team met, and as we went through and we looked at things like that ICS reported, and things that we found, we just sort of put them down and looked at them and said, okay, you know, this roof, we think it's going to go to this time frame. And of course, with I think the $2.8 million, which is allotted right now in contracted maintenance, we have that bar, that graph, and we try to push things in there. And if we come up with solutions to problems that cost less, we push things ahead from 15 to 14 or 16 to 15. And of course, if something comes up that we have to push things back, we'll push them back too. So, but it is a hard process when you get out really old. And I know Dr. Schatz had told me too. He said, well, remember, you know, 1, 2, and 3 are probably the most important years right now to get under a belt to know they're pretty firm. But it's a roadmap. It's not an exact science by any means, but it certainly is a plan that we intend to follow, and that we actually enjoy working with it and making sure that we hit everything that we need to. So, any other questions?
Anyone else? Brock, did you have something?
Madam Chair, members of the board, as you recall, when we started this long-range facility planning process, the need for new Southside Elementary was part of that, and the projects for the HVAC, and we made a decision as a district to pull those 2 items out as capital projects and then do the long-range ongoing maintenance piece separately. And so that's why we reported on those 3 items separately. They were all part of the initial plan for the long-range facility plan. And so what we hope to show you was really an effort to make that plan a living document and putting it in action. And I think many people, contractors, engineers included, and one of your former colleagues, Rusty Papacek, was in awe of the fact that we were able to get those 6 projects done last summer. That time frame was very tight. You recall we had special board meetings. We kept everybody's feet to the fire on a time frame, and we were never really sure, but we had faith that it could happen, and obviously it got done. Part to the work that this group does. Also, you'll recall that when ICS met with the board and did their presentation, they talked about for districts our size with square footage and total budgets and students, that typically you'd be looking at $4 to $5 million a year in ongoing maintenance, and we're committing about $2.8 million a year to that. And I would say that our team, as much as I'm pushing to make sure that gets spent, if they had another 2.2 to spend, I'm not sure where the time would come to get that done. And so we're doing as much as we can, and much more than I think we've done in the past, to stay on top of that. And one of the things we hear a lot, both within the community and when we bring the outside consultants in, is how there is not a sense of haves and have-nots in this district. We've got a lot of very old buildings that are well maintained, they're very clean, they're structurally sound. We've done a great job of keeping up with that, and I think that will only get better as we've made this commitment. I certainly appreciate the board's support for that, and certainly we will continue to do that work to make that happen. Lastly, I just want to make sure to thank Jim and Kevin and Mike and Jeremy. Everything we do in our department has a teamwork approach, and I get to sit here every other week and take a lot of credit for the work that happens in business services. Fact is, we've got incredible people working for us. I inherited a wonderful team when I came here 4 years ago, and they continue to do a great job. And I know very well what I don't know, and that's why I have gentlemen like them on my team to get that work done. And so where the rubber meets the road and the real work happens is with these gentlemen and their team, and I think they deserve all of the credit for making this plan happen and putting it into life for the district.
Thank you, Brock, and I guess I'd just like to echo that and give this, let this be our opportunity to thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
That was,
Thank you very much.
You know, when you gave us, we went on that tour of the schools and watching the AC units being installed, and it was kind of frightening how close to school opening that was, and what a miracle. And then just to be able to look on this spreadsheet and every one of them came in under budget, it was kudos.
Well, I
Fantastic.
remember Kim Caldwell called me at, I think it was July 7th, and he said, "My building looks like the Murrah building." You know, it was just ceilings ripped down, wires hanging, and he just said, "This will never be ready." I said, "Yeah, it will be," but anyway, again, contractors were great, and we just had a push, but we got it, so
Great.
thank you very much.
I do have one question. At the end of your presentation, you said something about working with the plan. Do you find that a more detailed, long-range facility plan changes the way you approach scheduling maintenance? I mean, has it given it more structure or more?
Yeah, I believe so. I think more structure, and it makes us think about, it has made me now start getting bids way ahead of time and planning. So sometimes I think a parking lot might cost $100,000, so I might budget $100,000, but yet when I do a planning a year ahead of time and get some probable costs from the engineering, maybe that only costs $80,000, but now I have $20,000 I could have planned to spend a little more. Or, you know, and sometimes it's over to my amount and I have to cut back. But yeah, it makes me a better planner, I believe. I think it was a good product to have.
Great.
So.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Anything you want to? Sure.
Just to follow up on the long-range facility plan, that in January we'll be bringing to you the revised version of that plan. As you know, each year we're going to bring to you an update, and so the next move for Jim and his crew is to look at that 10-year plan and to update that along with other things that we'll be updating so that we continue to move forward and that plan continues to live and breathe. It's not just something we put on a shelf, and it really has provided direction for their department, and I think that they're just following it to a T, so they've done a great job.
Great, thank you. And back to Brock, you have some information on us on bond refinancing?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. You recall that recently the board took action to direct administration to pursue available bond refunding opportunities and bring the best options back to you as a board for approval. This past week, I assembled a team including Jackie Gapp, Patty Richards, myself, and Marianne Smith to interview the two financial advisors that we have worked with in the past, that being PFM, represented by Myron Knudsen, and then AMCO Advisors, represented by Brian Osowski. The direction that we gave both of those organizations was to take a look at the totality of our debt structure in the district and provide for us any opportunities that make sense for us moving forward to do some restructuring. And you know, all of that is contingent upon when are call dates and when can you do restructuring. And if you do advance refunding, you recall we did an advance refunding here 2 years ago. Once you do that, you can only do it once per life cycle of a bond, so there may be some opportunities in some cases and in others not. So they were really to look at our whole portfolio. Both companies did that. Both companies provided us with very good presentations, and at this point I'm reporting to you that we will have made a decision that we'll be moving forward with refunding opportunities with PFM and Myron Knutson. And we'll be bringing to you for action. There's a two-step process that you may recall. The board will need to do pass a resolution authorizing the refunding, and then also making them available for credit enhancement. We'll bring that to you in the first meeting in January. The plan will be to do bond sale, at least of the 2007 series bonds. The two bonds we'll be looking at are the Davies bonds that we issued when we built Davies High School. The first one is a 2007 series bond. The call date on that is May of 15. We can do that refunding 15 days in advance, so the goal will be to sell that in February, so that'll be your next course of action following the authorization. We then will also be looking at doing a partial advance refunding of the 2008 series bonds. That was the larger of the two Davies bonds. To have those bank qualified, we can do no more than $10 million, so we'll do a $10 million advance refunding, and then a year from now we'll do a current refunding of that balance. And in total, the estimate is that that will save, the combination of those will save the district approximately $400,000 a year, about $140,000 a year on the first bond, and then the combination of the second bonds, approximately $260,000 a year savings there. So we think that it's in our best interest. Interest rates are very good right now. Certainly appreciate the time from the team that helped me do the interviews, as well as the two companies that came forward, and we'll be bringing those to you for your action in January and then February to finalize the bond sale.
Thank you. I have one question. Would this be at all affected if the legislature does create a larger loan fund? That's not who we would be refinancing with? Is that a separate deal?
Madam Chair, members of the board, we cannot use the state loan construction for existing debt, and so we would not be refunding there. These will be bonds that will be sold on the open market. But in that regard, we do have the bond issue that is out there for Ed Clapp Elementary, and the reason we could do that is because that project is not complete. We're still in capital construction, so if the capital construction is still underway, you can refinance through the loan construction program, and we did confirm again that we are very near the top of the requests that have been there, so if there is dollars there, our request is one of the first that will get acted on, and hopefully that will help us with the most recent bond issue that we did, approximately $26 million. Just under $11 million of which was the HVAC project. We cannot refund that portion through the loan program because they're completed, but we can for up to 80% of the cost of Ed Clapp Elementary.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Thank you. Any other staff reports? Dr. Gross?
Just two quick updates for you. Last meeting, I shared with you that we would be bringing the middle school task force back together. Just want to let you know that we will meet for the first time this week. Our task will be to review the feedback from the parents, their questions, their comments that came to us through the public forums, review additional research items around best practices with middle school, and then continue our conversation about potential modifications to the middle school schedule. The task force, as we move forward this year, will be built by or will include 4 teachers from each of our middle schools, 2 parents from each of our middle schools, and then the building principal. In addition to that, David Marcourt has agreed to serve on that committee as the FEA rep. The nice thing is when I reached out to those individuals who were on the committee a year ago and 2 years ago, everyone said yes. So they were very committed to continue our conversations about continuing forward with this. We did expand that original task force so that there are more parents and there are more teachers on the committee as we continue forward. The other thing that we are going to do is we will be creating a web page on the Public Information Warehouse that will house all of our agenda, the minutes, and the handouts as we continue through the conversations this school year. So that is up and running.
Great, thank you. John?
Madam Chair and Dr. Gross, the feedback, and I'm hearing, I'm not sure about others, from the community has shifted dramatically from concerns and complaints to acknowledgement and thanks. So it's really been a real, you guys have turned this into something where I think people are engaged and part of the process, and you're all on the same direction, going the same direction. So I commend you all for taking that and turning it into a real positive thing going forward versus us still dealing with the fallout of people being on different pages.
Anyone else? Dr. Schatz, anything to add? Okay. Bob, do you have anything
And
else?
then just the second update for you is the calendar committee is still active. We have met a second time and created a second draft of a 2015-16 calendar. The committee members are out getting feedback from their peers. We will be meeting again next week to discuss that feedback, to see if there are any potential changes to that, and to talk about other ways that we might want to gather feedback from even a wider array of individuals as we continue to move forward to create that 15-16 calendar to bring that to you for your review in the future.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Rachel?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to share an update again on the staffing at Ed Clapp Park, where we're at with that staffing with Jennifer Schulteis. We have currently posted 4 hourly positions and are hoping to have them placed by January. So it'd be the main administrative assistant who has been named, and that is Carrie, who is the administrative assistant right now at Eagles. She will move over with Mrs. Schulteis over to Ed Clapp. We've posted the building engineer position, the kitchen manager, and the office assistants, and hope to have those placed by January. And we closed the survey that was out to our certified classroom teachers last Friday. We had about 65 teachers. Not all of them were actually qualified to be part of that. They may be a teacher who's not on a continuing contract right now or a paraprofessional, and we were purely looking at classroom teachers. But from that survey, we now know that there's enough interest to open those up as an opportunity to transfer. So we are meeting with the principals from our most impacted sites next Thursday from Lewis and Clark, Centennial, Bennett, Kennedy, and then of course Eagles, because they will likely have displaced teachers. And we want to have very open conversations with those teachers of our current RSP report, what their enrollment looks like, and let them know that they should think about an opportunity to transfer either to Ed Clapp or another opportunity that may shift as we fill that. And those positions will post when we come back from winter holiday, January 5th. That's my update on Ed Clapp.
Thank you, Dr. Schatz.
And I had one more.
Okay, that was
Thank
the
you.
one. We'll get there.
Just an update on one of our operational planning items that we have as a teaching and learning department. One of our tasks this year is to sustain the implementation of our using data process, and several of our task forces and different programs that we work on at the district level and at the individual sites, we talk about the 4-phase dialogue, and that comes from a training through a company called Research for Better Teaching that we contracted with way back in 2010, and that was part of our alternative governance plan when we didn't make AYP 4 years in a row as a district. And we've worked with just an amazing presenter through that company, and she comes 6 times a year and works with 3 to 5 schools. And some of the buildings have been really on board with this, and they use it in their school improvement planning, they use it in their PLCs, and we have some sites that, because of turnover or just different focuses of their initiatives, or they've only been on the track for a year, aren't implementing to high levels. So what we've done this year, now that all the buildings have participated in the training, she's back 4 times this year. August, December, she was just here last week, February and April. And she's working with our principals, our assistants as well, and she has them for a half day, and she's really focusing this year on cultural proficiency and equity, and really talking about, it's not just about student data, that if you really in your heart don't believe in as a school culture that all students can achieve, it doesn't matter what we do, the students won't achieve. And she's really pushing that home, giving them a lot of research articles, giving them time to talk about successes and challenges at their site. And then she spends 3 days going out, and she spends 90 minutes at each site coaching their data teams. And there's a leadership team at each site, and then they coach at PLCs. So at the elementary level, there's a kindergarten representative, a first grade, all the way through 5th. And then those teachers participate in the building team, and then they coach at the PLCs every Wednesday afternoon. And really just working on building that culture from within to help our students be successful. So she'll be back again in February and then in April So that's just an update on the work of our operational plan.
Thank you.
Okay, I was going to give you an update on strategic planning. I think we have enough things going on. We met again last night with our group, and again, we have good attendance. Out of the 56 members, I think we've had at least 50 there each night, so that's pretty good. I'm pleased with that because it's a big commitment by all the different people involved. Last night, we had another presentation from the teaching learning team talking a little bit about future trends in education so that we could again educate the committee as to what those might be. We talked a lot about technology. We had Jodelle talk about 21st century skills, talked about the glass paper project. And so we feel like we have now uploaded a lot of information to that committee and lots of different reports that they've received up to this point. We spent time looking at the public focus group feedback that we got. And by each one of the different groups, we split everybody up into 7 different groups. And they drilled down and took a look at that feedback. We tried to come up with some themes. And so they have been fully briefed now on all that public input that we've had throughout this whole process leading up to this. We started working on core values last night. So that's the next step in this process, is to look at what is it that we really value in this district and what is it that we want to articulate in a strategic plan about where we want to go for the future. And so that'll be our next step, and then we'll be working on a mission and vision statement as we move forward. So the process is well underway, and we meet again in January for our next meeting.
Fantastic, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Schatz, comments? Thank you very much. Brock, you have anything else? Anne Marie?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Great, thank you. We are on to consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve those items.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed, say no. Consent agenda is approved. We'll take a short break and return at about 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Let's bring it on home. We're now at the business section of our meeting. The first item is the superintendent evaluation by North Dakota law. Every year, school boards are to conduct formative evaluations of their superintendent in December, and so we did. I want to thank all 9 of us for returning your form and your comments. The governance committee reviewed this at our December 2nd meeting. We have included the comments along with the individual's initials, unedited, so all of the information is here. Unless anyone has any information to add, I would entertain a motion to accept and file this report. John?
Madam Chair, I so move we accept and file this superintendent's performance report.
Second.
Motion, second. Any discussion? An action item, if you would take the roll, please, Anne Marie.
Goldenberg. Johnson.
Absolutely, yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson. Strand.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes. And I think, yeah, it says it all. We're very happy. Thank you for your good work. It was kind of a dud, wasn't it? We should have had a few more kudos rolling out here. I'm feeling a little embarrassed by that. There we go. Summative evaluation. Then you'll have to wear boots. All right. EL10, monitoring of EL10. You have the report and comments in front of you. Again, thank you to all 9 board members who returned the forms, your report and your comments. Does anyone else have anything to add? I'd entertain a motion to approve it.
Linda, I'll move we accept EL 10 as provided in our packet.
Been moved and seconded. Anne Marie, if you would call the roll, please.
Johnson.
Yes.
Knutson. Yes. Paulson.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes. And I just realized I don't have memo number 60. I must have missed it. Can I borrow someone's? Thank you. As many of you know, the Fargodome Authority has liaison representatives from different bodies, and ours will be expiring in April. And so we need to put forward our nominee. And so okay, I apologize here. We will be submitting a nomination, and this is only for discussion tonight. We're not acting on this. Our former representative has been Deb Mathern, and she is interested in serving again, but we also have the opportunity to investigate additional nominees and discuss who we intend to put forward. Does anyone have anything to add to the discussion at this point? Any thoughts?
Vice President, you do have
Yes.
to put forth 2 nominations to the city commission. So you guys, as a board, you'll have to put forth 2 nominations that we'll send, and then the city commission selects 1 person from your 2 nominations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Dinah?
And I think, reading the memo, Robin wanted us to discuss if we had any criteria that we were looking for in the individuals that we would put forward, so that between now and the next time, board members could potentially ask people that they think might be interested, if they would be willing to have their name put forward, in addition to Deb Mathern's possibly. I think in the past, we had discussed the fact that they should be living in the Fargo School District, and I know more recently things have come up about how frequently we should be getting reports from that individual and so on. So maybe if people have a strong feeling about that. That's something that we should be communicating to any potential person that we might ask who might be interested in having their name put forward, that if we were to put your name forward, then you would be required to report to us twice a year or three, whatever it might be that people have a strong opinion about.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other criteria that they think should be considered? Yes, Jim.
I don't have other criteria, but I have problems with some of them I see on the paper here. I really don't recall us ever having a criteria that our nominees would be residents of the city or of the school district, and that's certainly not a requirement of our employees. And quite frankly, the person I'm inclined to nominate would fail on that particular measurement. To me, the most important criteria is that this person will be thinking in terms of the needs of Fargo Public School when it comes to decisions at the Fargodome. I believe the reason the city has asked us to nominate is to have the interests of different entities in our community represented at that table. And by no means am I criticizing the fact that our past nominees have not taken that as their mantra, although I don't think it's their primary thought process. We talked in the past about potentially having one of our own staff members or board members be a nominee who clearly would have the interest of our students and our district in mind. So to me, that's the most important criteria, is are they going to bring our message and needs to that table? I have no problem with talking about how often we'd like them to report back to us, but I really think number C is the focal point for me.
Anyone else? Rebecca.
To build on what Jim said, I guess what I'm wondering is what kind of a consistent process, or maybe there hasn't been a consistent process in regard to taking nominations and in regard to those that are interested in serving, illustrating to us, their level of interest, their desire to serve, their commitment, their level of connectedness to the district. I would like us to see some sort of a way, or get an understanding, I guess, at least for myself, some way that we will determine if the person is worthy of, or if the two are worthy of nominations.
So speaking to process, I know in Robin's memo, she suggests following the board's standard practice for filling board vacancies is found in GP 2E. And I know that Deb Mathern was kind of reappointed by us, and my memory doesn't go back far enough. She was first recommended before I was on the board. Does anyone have a memory of the process that was followed when that took place?
Well, yes. One of the things that we have done in the past, doesn't mean we have to do it in the future, is if you're going to put forward somebody's name, ask them if they'd be willing to either come to the board meeting and make a brief statement as to why they're interested in serving in this capacity, or if they're unable to attend the meeting, provide us something in writing. And that is what has occurred in the past. And it's not a long process, but it gives us an opportunity to hear firsthand or read firsthand from the nominee as to why they want to serve. And it would also give us an opportunity for those that come here to present to us their brief explanation of desire to serve, to ask any questions we may have. I think what we've done in the past is any and all people that were nominated by board members went onto a list. We didn't preclude anybody from nominating somebody. We then listened or read from those that provided something. And then basically we started voting until we came down to the top two. If you only have two people nominated, you pretty much send both of them on. But if we have 5 people nominated, it may take more than one ballot to really determine who are the top 2 that we want to present to the city. And keep in mind, the city doesn't have to accept either of our suggestions, but they have in the past, and I would guess they would again.
So would you say that tonight, in order to send board members out with kind of a clear idea of what they're looking for in potential candidates, we should really, as recommended here, determine what our expectations and standards will be? What do you think about A, B, C, and D? Jim, you believe that A and B, that A should not be a requirement, that B should not be a plus or a minus, that employees could have equal consideration as community members. We really don't have any sort of expectation that's been outlined as D refers to. Anybody else's thoughts on these? John?
Madam President, actually, the last time this appointment took place, we did set that expectation that we would get reports back. And that was a discussion because I was one of the board members that wasn't comfortable with this notion that there was kind of a gap of communication, I thought. And again, it's just without knowing the history, I just feel, I agree. I agree that it shouldn't be necessarily a district employee or resident. I agree with Jim. It could be an employee or public advocate. I think the criteria should be advocating for the district, which is what I wanted to know if it was happening. We'd go 4 years without knowing or hearing or reading in the newspaper what our representative would be doing, and we wouldn't know. So that to me is a key point, is that whoever it is, in my view, really strongly is representing the district's interests. And to me, that's the highest priority, as well as Jim had also said, including reports back or reports to governance or some sort of a mechanism where we're apprised of the issues they're facing and how our views are being represented.
Let me ask you, or Jim or Dinah, that have been on governance for a while. Is it on the governance calendar to invite this person? Is it on a 2 times, 1 time, 3 times a year? Do we reach out and ask for reports? Are they expected to call us up?
At least thus far, randomly, every once in a while, we think about it, and we reach out to the person and ask them if they'll come present, and generally, they've always been willing to. I don't think there's anything wrong with us making a conscious decision that annually we would like you to be at the board meeting, and in fact, I'd like to tell them that it'll be at this exact board meeting for some other nefarious reasons that I have. So I have them report at the first meeting in December on what's happened through the calendar year, and then maybe submit semi-annually a written report as to any issues that they think we need to be aware of in terms of dome operations, dome expansion, and use by the district and the district's students. And I'll just give you one, for instance, why this would be good communication. And I could be wrong because you all know I'm an exercise nut. But originally, or at least at one point in time, the Fargodome was open in the wintertime for people to go over there and walk or rollerblade around the concourse. A lot of families did that on cold winter days. I don't think that's an option any longer for families on cold winter days. And I'm not saying it needs to be, but that was a decision made, I'm assuming by the Dome Authority, or at least by its management, that impacted Fargo families. And we didn't hear about it. We didn't voice that we thought it was a good thing to have it open. So I think having more structured communication, as John is mentioning, especially if we want this person to be advocating in sync with us, is a good idea. So, but in all fairness to all of them, it's been just random. Every once in a while we think, hey, maybe we should have them come in and give us a report.
So would it be reasonable, could we just by consensus ask governance number 1 to maybe put this on their calendar of work to set some clear expectations for reporting, if there's information we want to give to that representative in the future, some conduit for us communicating in that direction as well? Is that a hand up?
Oh, Madam Chairman, I think that, like Jim said, I think that C, having an advocate for the district, and D, having some accountability to this person are extremely important. And that's, I see it being a great benefit to us if it were a district employee. That would be my preference.
Okay. Let me ask again, and not to, to advocate either way. I recall, and this was before I was on the board, that a district employee was our representative, and I believe, and I don't know if it was the school district or the city or who it was that suggested a committee member would be preferable. Do you think that sentiment is still out there? Or, and I think the same thing was requested of NDSU at some time, that it was a, I think it, okay. I believe it was when, and I could be wrong, but I believe it was when I was still on the city commission. And I think the concern was the opposite of what you're voicing, that the Fargodome Authority be considered like any other board where you, while you are in that chair, like those of us are on this table, that be your primary concern. And so I think they felt that committee members would be more Fargodome first than staff people. But maybe, you know, maybe that cycle has played itself out and it's time for a stronger school district voice on that body. I'm not hearing any, oh, Dinah.
No, when you're finished, sorry.
I was going to wrap it up, so go ahead, please.
Oh, all I was going to say was that I think that maybe I don't remember in my time on the board ever having a clear understanding of how the Fargodome board was set up and what the goals of the Fargodome board are, other than it's made up of representatives of these various, you know, areas. So maybe that's a piece of information we need to know, because if it's Fargodome Authority first and your sponsoring organization second, then we should understand that in terms of our expectations of that individual. But that doesn't mean that the person that we appoint shouldn't be pro Fargo Public Schools, but we just need to have an understanding of you know, what the focus is supposed to be. So, but and just to the point, I have no strong feelings one way or another about whether they live in the district or not. I think it's all about the best representative for the district. So.
Okay, Brock?
Madam Chair, members of the board, and maybe everybody's familiar with the makeup. For the 8 years I was employed at NDSU, the NDSU rep was an NDSU employee, and I see still is.
Is it still Keith Bierke?
No, it's Troy Gorgon now. It
Okay.
was Keith, and then Troy took over when Keith transitioned off. And so I don't know how strong that sentiment was. What I'm saying is it looks as though there was a county commissioner, there was an NDSU currently making up that board, so that was true, it wasn't adhered to.
I don't think it was a hard and fast rule. I think it was just a sentiment at the time. We can have action since this is on our business agenda. Does anybody feel so inclined to present a motion on our, maybe updating our expectations and standards so we have clear direction going forward? Jim?
Well, I guess I don't think it needs to be a motion, but because I think you kind of rightfully noted that we should direct governance to get on our planning calendar a report from whoever is our anointed person, and figure out how that's going to be, if it's in person, semi-annual. If we need that as a motion, I'm happy to make it, but I think you as acting president can just direct that back to governance to work on. without one.
I
don't think anybody here had a problem with that.
I think actually what I was asking for was not that piece, but this list of 4 elements that maybe no longer are the 4 elements that we're going to have in mind when we are out in the community or within our district looking for possible nominees. So for example, if we're not going to require residency anymore, if we could just strike B, if that's irrelevant, and maybe emphasize C and D, that's what I was looking for, so that we have direction going forward.
Well, to that extent, I will be the first to tell you these 4 don't exist anywhere except for on this memo.
Okay.
That I think Robin wrote up. But I would make a motion that we are going to focus our efforts on C and have governance work on D. But quite frankly, I think any of us that think there's a good candidate, for whatever reasons, should bring that candidate's name forward. But I have no problem making a motion that we should be trying to find a member that's going to advocate for the needs of Fargo Public Schools. So I will make that motion.
I will second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Rebecca?
Okay, I think possibly, Linda, you're still looking for a little bit more on if we want to define the process a little bit more for, and having understandings, better understandings possibly, like Dinah mentioned, of the expectations of the person that serves and the understanding of the purpose of the Fargodome Authority, at least revisiting that and using that information to put together ideas for, folks that we would recommend be nominees and then evaluating that. So I personally would like to see a little bit more of somewhat of a formalized or formal process and just a better understanding of the Dome Authority and what the expectations are of the person that we might be, or the people we're asking to serve. And if that can be directed as, as president, then that's good as far as I'm concerned, but it seems like it should go back to the committee you were suggesting.
Well, we can certainly send that back to governance. I know that the charter that specifies the Fargodome Authority is pretty bare. It's just, it will have representation from. That's just all that's out there. And it's a recommending body to the city commission. I don't know what there is beyond that, but our timeline for putting names forward is, did I see March on here somewhere so we have time? Well, let's just ask governance to kind of report back. Maybe governance can come up with a very kind of concise description of what our expectation is of our representative, and that will give that'll give all of us guidance going forward, coming up with nominees and talking to folks that we want to talk with. Jim?
One other thing that might be helpful, because I'm not so sure the process is something I'm worried about, but it might be helpful, and I'm sure if we ask kindly, Anne Marie would find this for us, to find out how often they meet. Is there any compensation for the person, whether that's cash or tickets or whatever? So as we're getting ready to go out there in the community and maybe ask somebody, and they say, well, what does that mean? We can kind of tell them this is what we think the life of a Fargodome Authority board member is. How long the terms are, I believe they're 4 years, but maybe if we could get all of that and just have it emailed out to all of us. I don't know that we really have to have a discussion on it, because it's just the factual reality of what it means to serve on this board. That might give some of what you were thinking would be helpful, I'm guessing. And I know it would be helpful to me, so.
That's excellent. If you could have that for our next governance meeting, and then perhaps governance can decide at which meeting we would want the candidates there or their written material. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Anne Marie, if you would call the roll, please.
Knudsen, Paulson? Yes. Strand?
Yes.
Goldenberg?
Yes.
Johnson? Yes. Boyd?
Yes. Great, we will report back. We are now to committee liaison and correspondence reports. First off, does anyone have any correspondence to share? Other reports, let's go around this way.
Just a reminder that the next Communications Committee meeting is January 12th.
Okay. Thank you. David?
I have no report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca? Calendar.
Yeah, calendar committee. Well, as Dr. Gross said, we'll be meeting again next week, and there have been a couple of drafts that have been generated, and I have primarily been trying to gather feedback from parents that I know, some staff and teachers, so, and then sharing that information. There's been some good sharing of information of those that have been on the committee now prior to Tuesday's meeting, so that's, it's wonderful. It's just interesting to, well, the more I'm involved in it, the more I'm learning, you know. There are a lot of dynamics, that's for sure, but it's all fun. And everyone's interests and concerns are valid. And I think that even as I've been visiting with folks in the community, parents and whatnot, they're learning more. And teachers are learning more, and staff members are learning more about what it takes to put a calendar together. And it's not just about however many days we need to be in school. There are lots of details to think about. And I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to discuss on Tuesday an opportunity to involve some folks at a greater level. I think that, at least I know I have a good understanding that we've involved parents and teachers at a pretty high level, probably not to the level, you know, we can always do better, but my concern next would be reaching out more towards parents and figuring out how we can inform them a little bit better on what we're doing and gather feedback from them, but we also need to educate a little bit in regard to the parameters that we're working with. So it's definitely not a free-for-all. And then I was at the Clara Barton Hawthorne holiday store on Saturday volunteering, and that was fun. It's the 7th year that they've been doing this, and students are able to go in and buy gifts for their friends and family for $1. And it's fun to see all the little gifts around the tables, and it's really great to see. Lots of times the 5th graders are there to kind of work as elves to help the little ones, the younger ones, shop. And sometimes the shopping goes very quickly, and other times they're spending a lot of time in there making sure that they pick out that perfect gift. And this evening is the Clara Barton Hawthorne concert for choir and orchestra. And I know Bennett has theirs also, but our kids are going to be busy this season, obviously, with all these presentations. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Madam Chair, the GAC committee met in a special meeting Friday, and all of you have in front of you the new legislative priority pamphlets that have been finalized. Brock, thank you to your team and to Marianne for your diligence on that and good work. All of you received emails about the legislative assignments. I don't know that we heard from everyone, but we've kind of filled the slate of assignments. If you want to get your name on the list or see a legislator that you really have a relationship with, let us know. And because some of them were just filling some names with names because we didn't always have recommendations. But you have your legislative assignments in place via your email. Start communicating. If you have assignments, start communicating with your legislators. Set up personal meetings. If you want to take somebody else along with you, do it. Introduce them personally to the legislative priorities pamphlet. Bear in mind, we're not doing it through breakfast this year before January. We're doing it personally one-on-one with them this year. So you have all those in your email, and you have the pamphlets here. The legislative breakfast in Bismarck that we're scheduling is expected to be Tuesday, February 17th. So people will arrive Monday night. There'll be I believe a 7 a.m. Breakfast get-together Tuesday morning in Bismarck at the Kelly Inn, I think. Anne Marie will be your point person to communicate with about that, scheduling that trip, and for details of that going forward. And GAC will apprise you, of course, as issues evolve going into that. The staff will be holding, as they had in the past with West Fargo, I believe, Brock and Mark Lemire will be communicating generally toward the end of each week with a conference call or meetings with each other. Some of us will be in and out of that, but it's going to be, the baton will be largely passed to Brock and following the legislative issues, and we'll all be privy to that process. There is no GAC meeting in December because we had this the other day. So that covers GAC. Native American Commission I really enjoy that appointment. I really, really do. And the last session I was at, they had an honor ceremony, and I wish Robin would have known that they were going to honor her for her years of service. And somehow that fell through the communication, but they smudged us new members and gave us tobacco and gave us some wheatgrass, to things that were really, really interesting and significant in their ceremonies. So that's. I'll tell Robin what she missed. Maybe they've given her her award by now. That's my report.
Thank you. Jim?
Right.
I did have a meeting with Senator Flacco. He wanted to talk about what he's seen as the primary legislative agenda items and wanted to know if I could communicate those back to not only our board, but the state board. Told him I'd be happy to, and to keep me in the loop as things develop. And of course, things constantly develop when it comes to the legislative session. We decided not to have a planning meeting in December, and thus far that's holding. At least I see Brock's nodding, so it appears we'll be fine until January. Obviously, if something comes up that they need us before then, we'll pull everybody and have a meeting. But that's it.
Great, thank you. I don't have a written report from Robin. My liaison, Community Development Committee at the city was postponed. The meeting was canceled last week. It's rescheduled for this week, so I have nothing to report on that. Anything further? Any further thoughts? Yes, John?
The birthday committee has a report. Dr. Gross's birthday is December 18th, so Bob, we'll be thinking of you when that day rolls around.
Happy birthday. Okay, if that's it for reports, we are set to meet for our next meeting January 13th, and we are to debriefing. John?
Nice work tonight, Madam Chair.
I apologize for completely whiffing on the Fargodome thing, but thanks for everybody. Appreciate it. So I think it's time to have a little holiday get-together. Let's go. We're adjourned.